So
You've got a funny grin on your face. It's like
Right.
you're frightened to even say.
it's not frightened. It's like,
Welcome to Big Questions, Short Answers. I'm Sian.
and I'm Andy, Sian's husband, asking the big life questions.
And possibly adding a little bit of unsolicited advice.
This podcast is brought to you by Sian's value-based online course. Visit sianjacquet.com to find out more. Okay, so the question of it, we touched on it in an earlier podcast, and what I want to talk about, and it was to do with burnout, but takes it a bit further, is workplace bullying. Work bully. Something that I know that you abhor, but it happens a lot, doesn't it? It happens a lot.
What do you mean by workplace bullying?
Well, again, you always ask me to clarify these things, these big questions. Well, I suppose it's to do with in a situation of intimidation where...
The magic word you're looking for
We
is
like magic words.
repeated.
Sorry, again?
Repeated.
Repeated. Say that again?
Bullying is an action or a way of being treated that doesn't leave you feeling good, wherever on the scale. But there is a big difference between somebody in a work situation giving you a clear instruction to do something that you don't want to do, and you hear it, you internalise it, and it's, well, you're bullying me by telling me to do that, yeah, on a one-off occasion. I mean, there's quite a lot of times in my work when I kind of unravel that, yeah, I am being bullied. Well, okay, we'll define it. Bullying is when there is, the way I think of it, right, is whoever is doing the bullying, there's some prep time in their head beforehand. It's not a one-off in the moment. It's you are premeditatingly trying to be unreasonable, put somebody or a group down. It's directed towards somebody, and it's intended to intimidate, and it's intended to make somebody, let me just use a word that we'll all understand, hurt. Yeah? That's bullying.
But when you say intended, there are some managers who use that as their managerial technique. They're constantly bullies. You
Well, then they're going to be a bully inside of work and outside of work.
Yeah.
And again, the people who are, if you are a bully, you have an inadequacy. You're looking for power, or you're trying to cover something up in your own self. Bullying, the first question to ask yourself, if you feel unhappy and you feel hurt and sad because of the way you're being treated, the first thing I would ask anybody to explain to me is, has it happened before? Does that person do it to other people? Yeah? Is there a pattern to this behaviour? Because then I'm more inclined to do more digging and research as to, is this a bullying situation? The other side of the coin is I quite often come across, and it does tend to be younger people, and not saying every young person is flaky, that is not what I'm saying. It's I am being treated unfairly, they are bullying me.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm not sure they are bullying you. They're being very clear about what their expectations are, and you don't like hearing it.
Right. So what you're saying is that sometimes, as a receiver, you can misinterpret instructions because you just don't like them.
Yep. And then the word bully's brought out.
Right, because everyone knows that's a kind of HR issue.
I'm, as you said earlier, it's a button in me, right? I have very little tolerance for people who manage other people, whether it's in the workplace or actually in family situations, that they use bullying as their fundamental technique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like an overpowering power, isn't it, really?
Yeah, well, it's needing to have power over somebody. But the difference is, and this is, again, the world according to Sian, and I'm sure there are many other people who'd say I was way off mark. But the way I filter it is there a consistency and a pattern here? Yes.
Right.
And this is a weird thing to say, but this is actually what I think. Is the person who's doing the bullying getting their jollies out of this? Do they actually enjoy belittling and putting somebody down?
Right.
Yeah. And I'm sad to say that there are a frightening number of people who do like that feeling of power over another human being by belittling them, and they do it consistently. because it makes them feel good about themselves. Well, if you unravel it all, a bully has got some issues about their own self-confidence and their own self-belief. Or we're tipping into personality disorders, right? Well, that's a whole different ballgame, yeah? But I think that, if I'm talking to somebody and you're looking at my working environment and I feel like I'm being bullied, the questions you need to ask yourself are quite simple, really. Is there a pattern to it? Is it happening to anybody else? Or am I allowing myself, to respond to something in an emotional way that makes me feel bad? Because actually, I'm being challenged with a clear boundary here. Yes, you're not actually being bullied. You are being given a very clear boundary.
Do you think there's some blurring that goes on there?
Well, I think we're all triggered, aren't we, from our life experience? And, we don't suddenly get out of bed in the morning and go to work and all the rest of our life experience disappears. It's all part and parcel of how we respond to something in the moment. Yeah?
You always say, like, not to bring up my school life, but you always stand up to the bully. And I remember having a good old fight with one of the bullies at school, and I felt very proud about that. But you always say, you stand up to the bully.
Yeah.
Stand up in his face.
Yep.
And you still think that works, not just in a playground situation,
stage, isn't it? Let's
not in
be
a
fair.
playground situation, but in a work situation.
Well, let me go back to the playground situation, because actually it's in school is where we learn this resilience. We learn how to protect ourselves from people who are overpowering us. Is it bullying? Is it intimidation? I don't know, whatever it is, right? Somebody's overpowering us. Well, it's in school. That's where we learn where our boundaries are and what, we begin to work out what's right and wrong. So I have on numerous occasions, chatted to people, friends, colleagues, even in work situation where they'll say, my child's at school and they're being bullied, right? What do I do? How do I manage that? So if you're dealing with a younger child that's in school, if you remember, even when our kids were little and in school, and they'd be, so-and-so's being nasty to me and they're hurting my feelings and they're not letting me play and they're whatever. What I would say to our kids, and I've shared this with many people, is you teach your kids to put your hand up, the palm of your hand in front of somebody and say, stop doing that. You are hurting my feelings. Now, you're laughing at me. But if you've got a 5-6-year-old who's able to say that,
right,
what they're doing is they're teaching themselves, they're recognising their need to protect themselves, and they're finding their voice.
Right.
Yeah? They're not becoming a victim. They're not allowing somebody to run roughshod up for them.
Right.
Stop that. You are hurting my feelings.
Yeah.
Yes? If you like. All I do is, as people get older, whether it's work or whatever, I take that concept and I'll present it in a way that you at this age and stage can say it, yeah? So if somebody at work is having a go at you and is not making you feel safe and is intimidating you and belittling you and disrespecting you,
right,
the first place I would go to is, right, you need to find a safe way to sit down with that person and say to them, you don't accuse, by the way, we don't start by burning the house down. And if you can't do it on your own, by the way, it's perfectly okay to ask somebody to come with you to be there as you're doing it. I really do believe that, because sometimes there is serious power inequities. But you find a way of sitting down with somebody and saying, look, I just need to share with you, in the last 3 weeks, this, and this happened.
Right.
And when it happened, you responded like this. This is how it made me feel. This was my experience. I don't know whether you're meaning to do that, but you're leaving me feeling disempowered, very unhappy, and I feel like I don't even want to bloody be here anymore. Look, you're asking me these questions, and what's really jumping into my head is that the first person who's responsible for anything is yourself. Yes? Do not be intimidated and bullied and treated appallingly anywhere in your life, and find a way to find your voice to explain how this is leaving you feeling.
Without accusation.
Yes.
That's the key.
Right? Now, there comes a point where, there are very different situations. I'm talking the ABCs here. Sometimes we're up to XYZ of bullying and intimidating. That is a whole different ballgame. But the chances are that in a very basic term, either somebody is triggering you because the way they're communicating with you makes you feel hurt and small and disrespected. Are they doing it consistently? That is the fundamental difference.
Right.
Yeah. Between having the odd clash with somebody
Yeah.
or somebody bullying you.
And just a case of sitting down and,
Well, that in itself
essentially
can be really difficult.
Yeah, it can be difficult, can't it? And, saying, stop, you're hurting my feelings, like a 5-year-old. But it's trying to understand the other person as to whether or not this is intentional or not.
Yeah.
If it's bloody intentional, you need to get the hell out of there, I would imagine.
Well, yes. And changing the circumstances is one way of doing it. But again, I'm not really an advocate of keep moving on. I'm an advocate of learn the skills. Yeah. Learn the skills to find your voice. And literally, am I safe here? And is that person willing to listen, willing to learn? I've got to be fair here, right? There are people that I've worked with and I know who have been accused of being bullies.
Okay, right.
There's the other side.
You've been working with people who are accused of being bullies, okay?
And there have been occasions when there was absolutely right for that accusation to be put at their doorstep because they were.
Yeah.
But if I'm honest, the vast majority of people, they're not really bullies, right? Okay. They're just not very self-aware. They get very wound up under pressure. They overbake the cake in the way in which they communicate with people, the tone and the attitude. And when you actually sit them down and you explain to them in a calm, processed, evidence way, you need evidence if you're going to challenge anybody's behaviour in that, certainly in a work situation. They're devastated that they think, oh, no.
Oh, right.
Oh, I don't know.
Suddenly they realise.
Yeah. And I would say most people I've ever needed to challenge, because the way in which they've presented themselves has been, they're out of order. The way they're speaking to people and the way they're leaving hell and desolation behind them. I can think of one guy who I worked with who worked in a very male environment where there was, buckets of testosterone anywhere. And the culture was whoever shouted the loudest and banged the table, that was the person you responded to.
You're right.
Yeah. We'll skip over the fact that was actually an endemic cultural issue. But there was a disproportionate number of people in that organisation who bullied their way. And after kind of being involved for about 6 to 12 months, it was very clear that actually there was one bully who was quite high up the food chain who allowed this behaviour to carry on because it suited their agenda. But the vast majority of people who were, and we're talking quite a significant number of people. I have 4 or 5 people in a senior role who are all being called bullies. They weren't bullies at all. They were reflecting the management style that they were under, number one.
Right.
And it was like accepted that you could do that. And it was only when you kind of stopped and unravelled
and put a bit of a mirror up,
they were able to see how they were leaving broken, hurt people. And when you look at an organisation, again, go and speak to any HR expert who goes in there and knows on a daily basis what's happening. You look at any business where you've got a considerable, you've got one department where there's churn and burn and people are leaving out the door, but the leaders are still there and there's a lot of complaints about them. Hello. You know what I mean? Looking for, but you're looking for consistency as far as bullying is concerned. It needs to happen more than once. And if somebody really is a bully, you won't be the only person that they're bullying.
And the thing to address it, either if you are the bully or are being bullied, is to note it, to actually step forward and get it out of the open and talk about it.
Yeah. And that's the bit that's really difficult, right? It's really difficult when you've had a kicking, your confidence is low, you've been disrespected, you're tired. Let's link it now. You talked earlier in another podcast about burnout, and that's what burnout looks like, that you feel dreadful and you don't want to go into work and your energy is leaking. We're not taught, are we, how to find our own voice and speak up for ourselves in an appropriate way. Because there is an appropriate way in the workforce. There's an appropriate way everywhere. But, it's about, I would be saying to somebody, my advice to them would be, okay, first of all, write down what you're talking about. When did it happen? How did it happen? How did it leave you feel? And once you've got 2 or 3 of them, then you need to go and share with that person and go to HR and ask them to come a trusted colleague to come with you. Yeah? But find your voice. And again, I'm looping this back now to parenting, to school, to preparing people to be in the workplace. We need to take on the responsibility of teaching and empowering kids and young people to find their voice. Yeah? You need to be able to speak up for yourself. And it's not an easy thing to do, but it's like everything else. Once you use that muscle,
It becomes easier.
it becomes easier once you've learned how to do it. But if you're going to challenge in a working situation because you believe you're being bullied, you need evidence. You need how, why, where, and when. Yeah, you know what I mean? You need to look at it from a very clear point of view, not an emotional one, which if you are being bullied, is a very, very hard thing to do. Yeah?
That is where we're going to have to leave it just now, but really, really sound advice. Join us next time on Big Questions, Short Answers with Sean Jacquet and me, Andy.
If you have any questions you want to ask, please send them via the website, seanjacquet.com.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share it with everyone you know.
We really do appreciate you sharing 15 minutes with us.
And if you want to do a bit more learning, go on to Sean's website, seanjacquet.com. There's a course on values to create the life you truly love. I did it, and it really does do what it says on the can.
See you next time.